I would say we are in a broken building right now.
This week in Pennsylvania, partisan paralysis is gripping the Capitol building and work that's past due is undone. Nearly $300,000 in public money used to settle a sexual harassment claim against the now former Shapiro staffer. Republican women lawmakers not happy about it. And if you see those school buses with flashing red lights and extended stop arms, more and more of them will also be watching you. Hello and welcome to This Week in Pennsylvania. I'm Dennis Owens. We're covering hot topics in PA policy and politics, as well as the issues that are important to you and your family. Well, the world watched as the nation's capital was gripped by partisan paralysis, unable to name a speaker for 3 weeks. They solved that this week. Less publicized is the dysfunction gripping our state capital. Little of consequence is getting done under the dome, even though it's costing you a lot.
I'm a business owner.
Chris Gebhardt's been a state senator for just over 2 years, owned an insurance agency for just over 2 decades.
When you come from business world, what we do is we identify problems, you craft solutions, and you implement them.
Which is why he's so frustrated in Capitol world. State budget due June 30th, not done. Penn State, Pitt, and Temple would have appreciated their funding June 30th, not done. Moving the date of next year's primary, not exactly legislative heavy lifting, not done.
Now we're in a position where no one's allowed to win. You know, we have two sides of the building and no one's allowed to win.
The Democrat-controlled House is passing bills, the Republican-controlled Senate passing bills, none of them negotiated, not going anywhere.
This is the chronic mismanagement that we've seen since the beginning of session from the House Democrats.
Republicans blame Democrats and vice versa.
The simple fact of the matter is we have a Senate who's never had to consider what a Democratic House might want to do, and they're running face first into that.
Landmark legislation.
This was rare success, bipartisanship around breast cancer screenings. But if the hope was women making history as leaders of both chambers would get stuff done, well, not yet.
I think what you're seeing is a result of party, not gender.
So help me God.
There was inaugural goodwill, but it's become bad blood over a broken deal on school vouchers. Governor Josh Shapiro could use his bully pulpit to force leaders to the budget table, but some suspect he won't because that would draw attention to the fact that the budget's not done.
The governor is trying to avoid the fact that he is lacking the leadership to get his House Democrat caucus in line to truly get down to the work and finish this budget process.
All this inactivity is not inexpensive. This year, the Senate will cost more than $132 million. The House, more than $241 million. Combined, that's more than $374 million, which is more than $1 million a day, every day, which drives our business guy batty.
I would say we are in a broken building right now.
At some point, the adults in the room are going to have to speak up, and they're going to have to move forward.
Don't take this the wrong way, but who are the adults in the room exactly?
I'll leave that to myself.
And here's a sobering thought. If the legislature can't successfully change a primary date, which is relatively easy, how are they supposed to fix big things like funding of public schools that's been deemed unconstitutionally inequitable? Well, nearly $300,000 in public money will be used to settle a sexual harassment complaint against one of Governor Shapiro's former top aides. Legislative Affairs Secretary Mike Verb resigned last month, but the allegation was lodged back in March. The accuser will get nearly $200,000. Two attorneys will get $50,000 each. Nobody's talking because of a non-disclosure agreement. Republican lawmakers in the House and Senate want to know when Shapiro learned of the allegations, why he didn't remove Verb sooner, and say legislation is needed to better protect victims.
Myself and a few other House members are looking into ways that we can fix the system, changes that we can make to, one, make the process more transparent, and two, protect women who work here in the Capitol from men like this, from men who act this way.
We have an independent, robust process already in place, but certainly if others have ideas on how that can be strengthened across the board for the legislature and the executive branch, I'll certainly be willing to take a careful look at that.
The governor says he can't comment on exactly when he first heard of allegations against Verb because of that non-disclosure agreement. The Secretary of the State Department of Environmental Protection is resigning. Richard Negrin is on medical leave until December 9th. His resignation will take effect after that. Executive Deputy Secretary Jessica Shirley will take over during the search for Negrin's replacement. It's an important position because greenhouse gas initiatives are a huge issue in Harrisburg right now. Well, one of the first things Josh Shapiro did as governor was promise to streamline the processes for getting permits and licenses. He offered a progress report this week, and it's a good one, he says. Bureaucratic backlogs have been greatly reduced or eliminated, and he gave examples. When he took office, it took 27 days for a dentist to get a license. Shapiro says that's now down to 4 days. Wait times for unemployment compensation phone calls were over an hour. He says that's now down to 17 minutes. Still not good enough for the governor, but a lot better. Even the largest pro-business organization in PA is giving him props.
We're making progress thanks to the hard-working Commonwealth employees who are dedicated to this effort. They're the ones on the front lines. They're out there identifying areas where we can speed up the process and improve.
While permitting and licensing reform do not sound exciting, it doesn't sound like the sizzle. To us, this is really, really important stuff. And I'll tell you what, this is not only the sizzle, this is the steak. This is vitally important in making Pennsylvania more competitive.
And the Education Secretary said his department has greatly reduced the wait times for teaching certificates. They were a few months. They're now down to 2 to 3 weeks, which is crucial during a major teacher shortage. More good news. State police have seen a spike in applications since the governor eliminated the college degree requirement for incoming cadets. PSP says the average number of eligible applications per month increased 240%. Well, if you decide to drive around a school bus with its stop sign out and lights flashing, you might want to smile for the camera. State law lets schools districts put safety cameras on their buses to capture cars and license plates that drive past a school bus illegally when the stop arm is out and red lights are flashing. The program's been around for 5 years, but would have expired this week if the legislature hadn't renewed it. Now it's around for good.
We have a duty to protect our children, our most precious asset, and this allows them that opportunity to have that tool in place to ensure the safety. And if we save one life as a result of this, it's a win in my book.
And 40 school districts across PA have joined the program since 2018, issuing more than 4,000 citations. New dog law is a long time coming, the statewide SPCA says. It requires dogs be licensed when they're bought or adopted. New rules do. Requires kennels to provide breeder information, vaccine and medical records, and any bite history. And it raises license fees for the first time in more than 20 years. The money goes to the Bureau of Dog Law Enforcement. Well, umpires, referees, and all officials with whistles, the state Senate's got your back. It passed a bill this week that would crack down on unruly or threatening fans, parents, and coaches by creating a new offense called harassment against sports officials. The bill passed overwhelmingly in the Senate. It is now on to the House. Coming up, empowering parents or a book ban? We're wading into that culture war topic with Senator Ryan Aument, whose bill passed this week. He hates the term book ban. He'll show us why in just a minute.
Nobody has come forth and exactly explained what criteria puts something in the sexually explicit category. Who gets to make that list? Where is it coming from? Are you going to include science books and health books and art books?
And welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania, joined now by State Senator Ryan Aument, Republican from Lancaster County. Thanks for being here. That was a teacher from Cumberland County expressing concerns about your bill that she worries would make schools tell parents what sexually explicit materials are in the library and in books, and then have them sign off before their kids could check out that book. Is that basically what the bill is?
Yeah, it's a good summary. Yeah.
Who gets to make as she said, who gets to decide what's sexually explicit?
Well, so what the bill does, the bill, I think importantly, puts a very clear definition into the school code as to what sexually explicit content is. So there's a clear definition around sexually explicit content. There's a clear definition around sexual conduct that's lifted from the Crimes Code, Title 18. There's been very little disagreement as this bill's moved through the process last session, again this session, around that definition. I think the definition is quite clear, and it's important to have that in the school code. So the definition is in the statute, and then a process by which schools must identify material in libraries as part of course content that meets the definition, and then have a process in place to notify parents and a process so that parents can opt their child in to any content that meets that definition.
Many senators are calling it, in the heated debate the other day, a book ban. And I know steam sometimes comes out of your ears when you hear that. Why? Is it a book ban?
It's absolutely not a book ban. And in fact, I think it prevents book bans because you create a process by which parents can make decisions with respect to what content their own child can have access to. No other children, but their own children in school. This allows the material to stay in the school, but also empower parents to make decisions with respect to we're talking extremely graphic material. We're not talking about To Kill a Mockingbird or Paradise Lost, the great classics literature. We're talking about extremely graphic material and parents being able to make choices with respect to their own children.
I will concede some of the evidence that you guys had in your various hearings, we can't show it on TV. It's that explicit, and some of that is in middle schools, I guess.
Yes.
But this is the latest culture war on this books and schools, and it just kind of cropped up a couple of years. Why wade into that?
Well, I think it's important. I think we can actually help resolve some of the cultural battles that are taking place at the local level. Yes, all across this Commonwealth, we've seen heated local school board meetings. This happens.
And elections, by the way.
And this happened across the country. And you're right. This is a hot topic in school board elections. I think the legislature could actually be helpful here by applying or providing a consistent standard across the Commonwealth to ensure that those families who wish to have access to this material can have access to it. You have a clear definition around what sexually explicit content is, what sexual conduct is in the school code, a clear process to identify the material, notify families, and for parents to be able to opt their children in. So I think it prevents book banning and helps resolve some of these cultural battles at the local level.
The minute it passed the Senate, a number of groups sent press releases out condemning it, criticizing it. Lots of groups oppose it. I spoke with Sharon Ward of the Education Law Center, who said this about his bill.
Every school district would have to go through every single book, and if there was a book that had a single word or phrase in it, that book would then be considered sexually explicit, and that would require a notice. That's a no-no. The Supreme Court said you can't do that. You need to look at books in their entirety. You need to consider their merit. Second, the bill also not only permits but encourages school districts just to remove books that they believe meet this definition.
A couple things to unpack. You're a Republican. Normally, less government is more. Does every school have to go through every page of every book in their libraries?
The schools would have to have a process by which they identify books in their library and that are included as part of curriculum, course content that meet the sexually explicit definition. Again, that definition is very clear. So certainly, I recognize that this will create some additional workload at the local school district level. And I've engaged our school districts on this. I've engaged our school librarians on this. But schools should be doing this, in my view, anyway. The material we're talking about is extremely graphic, and we should identify
She argues schools already have a process for parents to deal with this, and that your bill is unconstitutional.
The constitutional argument, I think, and Sharon testified during our hearing last week, I think that argument was clearly refuted. The constitutional law, the case law that she is citing, deals with book bans. This is not a book ban. She continues to say that it is, because I recognize that term doesn't poll well. It's a political charge from my perspective, but it's not a book ban. So that case law doesn't apply.
And what do you say to groups that are thinking this is an opportunity for people who might be homophobic to scrub references to the LGBTQ community and literature? And she said point blank that it sends a bad message that a black kid or a gay kid is not welcome by removing works that are sympathetic to them, and it can also be seen as an attempt to marginalize or attack those.
Yeah, again, I completely disagree. The intent is to focus exclusively on content that is extremely graphic sexual images that parents should know about and should have the ability to make a decision whether their child should have access to it. Last session, we specifically removed the term homosexuality from the definition that was taken from the Crimes Code. I worked with Senator Boscola to do that. So clearly, we've made it very clear in the definition, this is not an attack on LGBTQ Pennsylvanians.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there, but more with Ryan Aument right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back to This Week in Pennsylvania. We have Senator Ryan Aument, Republican from Lancaster County, and our analyst, Christopher Nicholas, the Eagle Consulting Group, and Danielle Gross with ClearPoint Communications. Danielle, you have the first question.
Sure. Thanks for joining us, Senator. We are taping this on October 27th, which is 5 years to the day of the Tree of Life massacre, and we're about 48 hours away from the mass shooting in Lewiston, Maine, where among the folks targeted were children in a bowling league. Rather than focus on ideas like books, the parents I know want to see some common sense gun control laws come out of the state legislature. And for the past 5 years since the Tree of Life massacre, none of that has come out of the Senate, the Republican-controlled Senate. Do you think there will ever be any appetite to enact any common sense gun control in the Senate?
Well, I think certainly the parents that I interact with, just had a town hall meeting yesterday morning. The parents expect that we're going to protect their kids at school. They do expect that our schools are going to be safe. And so we have certainly taken legislative steps to provide school security grants to ensure that our kids can expect to be safe when they enter into a school. We've increased mental health funding and counseling services in our schools. We need to continue to focus there. Certainly continue to have a debate as to how we can best protect our school children, but we have to continue to take those steps where there's broad consensus in Harrisburg, and I think there continues to be broad consensus to continue to make funding available to schools, to ensure their schools are safe, to ensure that our young people have access to mental health counseling, mental health services. But the parents I talk to also most certainly believe that we need to take steps to empower parents to make decisions with respect to their own child's education and to protect their children from extremely graphic sexual content.
Any chance, let me follow up just on that, a quick answer. No appetite to do anything as far as restricting actual guns?
As we have this conversation within our caucus in the legislature, I don't see at this point a viable path for new gun control measures in the Senate.
Okay, Chris.
Senator, thanks for being with us. As the resident political consultant here, I am normally loath to bring up the state budget because everybody else around me does it. But now we are however many days and hours, Danielle could tell us, from the deadline, and we still have yet no fully completed budget. So is there an appetite in the legislature and the governor to actually get it done? We're just going to hang around and not do it till next year.
No, I absolutely believe there is an appetite to finish our work. Conversations continue as it relates to enabling language in the fiscal code and other policy items that are related to the budget. Those conversations continue. I actually am optimistic that we're going to be able to work towards a resolution this year as we then begin our work on next year's budget very, very soon.
What role should the governor be playing to get this thing across the finish line, in your view?
Well, certainly I think the governor has an important role to play with the conversations that we have with the House. We have a very narrow majority, 102 members of the House. At various points over the last year, they've dropped below 102 to 101 members, and it seems to me that when that happens, they've often not bothered to show up for work. So I think the governor encouraging the Democratic members, the Democratic majority in the House, to show up for work and to work with us to complete a budget is an important role the governor can play.
All right, Senator Ryan Aument, thank you so much for being with us. Stay with us. We're back with the analyst in just a moment.
It was incumbent upon the leaders in the legislature to recognize they got to figure out how to work together, how to move bills back and forth, how to compromise.
Governor Shapiro, I asked him this week, what is his role in getting that budget, which is not technically done? Mostly done, yes, not completely done.
Apparently not a lot. He doesn't think his role is. He just did the whole little, let's get the legislature to compromise thing. Okay, we've known that forever. Now what?
Now what? What should the governor's role be in your view? And should he be doing more of a bully pulpit thing and saying, hey, and alerting everyone that this thing isn't done and these folks aren't getting it done?
Yes, that's what he should be doing. It does not appear from that clip you played that he's actually doing that. Because instead of saying that, he did the whole, they have to compromise.
Well, he has said they need to compromise.
But if he did say that, I have the feeling that the House Republicans in particular would say that Governor Shapiro is sticking his nose where it doesn't belong.
Right.
So I don't know. He's damned if he does. He's damned if he doesn't.
Well, and taxpayers are paying more than $1 million a day, as we pointed out in the story at the lead of the show. They're paying more than $1 million a day for what is mostly a legislature that isn't getting stuff done. And the scary thing to me, as we happen to mention, they can't even move a primary date. How are you going to do big things like the funding of schools?
And their next week's session is going to be truncated.
So what's the answer here?
Shortened, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm using big words.
They won't have as many days to not do anything, is what you're saying. Okay, yeah.
There was a poll released this week saying Governor Shapiro doing very well. Actually, Trump had improved on his numbers. Bob Casey doing very, very well in the state as well. Shapiro getting very good numbers, and that was even after this situation with Mike Verb and the sexual harassment and the settlement. Is that going to ding him at all, or is he beyond that?
I think it's kind of still an open wound that can be pressed on. What I want to know is who asked for the non-disclosure agreement, the NDA. Is that something the woman involved asked for, or something the Shapiro administration asked for? Because the governor is now all worried about violating the integrity of the NDA. So it'd be nice to know if that's something he insisted on. So again, I think it's a drip, 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 drip on allegations.
Well, I want to be very clear, and one thing I can tell you as a woman who's worked in Harrisburg for almost 20 years is that the culture of sexual harassment is ingrained at the Capitol, ingrained. And Mike Verb didn't start this behavior recently. You know, he was at the Capitol for a long time. He started with the House Republicans, and I can tell you that there are leaders and lawmakers condemning his actions and the actions of the governor who are covering up for offenders in their own caucus.
Let's hope maybe that starts to change now that the top person in the House and the Senate, both women, the House Speaker and the Senate Pro Tem.
Danielle, to your point, I spoke with a woman this week who is a Democrat, a proud Democrat, not happy with the governor only because she said this idea of protecting good old boys, and whether that happened or not is not, we don't know yet, but she said that is a triggering thing for a number of women.
Absolutely, and it needs to be absolutely rooted out.
Agreed.
Wow, they agreed. Let's mark the date and let's get out of here before they stop agreeing. Thank you so much for joining us on This Week in Pennsylvania. If you missed an edition, you can see all of them on thisweekinpennsylvania.com, and we sure hope to see you right here on This Week next week.
We'll disagree.